Is everybody breathing? Now I just want to talk about, start putting a few things together here. That's that word Bereshit, okay? Since I didn't actually show it to you when I thought I was going to. This here's the word ruach in the Hebrew. That's the word translated as spirit. Now, spirit's a Latin word that he probably never said or even possibly heard in his entire life. He may have heard it. There is a chance Latin was around and it was kind of moving into that region. The chance of him saying spirit is almost zero. Why is that important? Because he wasn't thinking in Latin. He was thinking Semitic, Aramaic, and Hebrew, with maybe a touch of Greek in there as well. The Greek is pneuma, which means underlying substance. Now let me read to you what this word rucha means. This gravity force cannot be sensed directly by humanity's mind nor devices. It is interesting to note that phrases like forever and ever and from age to age is more common or more accurately translated from the Aramaic as from cosmic gathering to cosmic gathering, implying that the Aramaic speaking people were very familiar with and accepted the concept of a massive dispersal of the universe and subsequent gravitational coalescence. Just be open, I know it's kind of wide. And they recognized this more than 2,000 years ago. However, in contrast to modern theory, they understood this expansion and coalescence to be cyclic in nature. In fact, less than 5% of the total universe can be detected and observed, and that includes by science. 5%, less than. Dark energy matter is therefore the vast majority of the universe, a universe which for all practical purposes to us is not there. Everybody breathing? I'm going to ask that a lot. It seems reasonable that if what we call real is in fact less than 5% of the universe, we may want to consider something seemingly unreal as to what the universe is all about. Humanity cannot directly contact these forces. We can only sense their impact in the limited material universe that we think is real. These invisible forces are called rucha. Magnetism, electromagnetism, electricity, cosmic expansion, spirit, nuclear forces, subatomic forces, anything else that fits into that. In the Gospel of Chi, in the Gospel of Thomas, I believe it was the disciples asked Yeshua, what is the sign of the living Father within you? And he says, if they ask you, or what is the sign of the living Father within you, tell them it is movement and rest. Movement and rest is rucha. What's an example of movement and rest? Breath. When he said rucha, what's translated as spirit, more accurately in the ancient Aramaic understanding, what he was saying was breath. Okay? Breath. That doesn't mean it's not spirit, but what it does mean is that spirit is breath. And then further on in Thomas, he says, if they ask you what is the sign of the living Father within you, tell them it is movement and rest. Tell them we came from the light, the place where the light became manifest and obvious in their image. We came from the light. Now, I'm going to start pulling a couple things together here. Has anybody ever seen the flow pattern of the universe, what science believes the universe looks like? Anybody ever seen that? I'm not going to shoot you. This is the love gun, not the one that the band Kiss was talking about in the 70s. That's a completely different subject. We're not going to go into that one here. I even got a little cardboard one in the record when I was a kid. Ever seen the flow pattern of the universe? This is from the original cosmic expansion. What did it look like? What's that flow pattern? You see that? I wish it was a little bit darker. That's called a toroidal sphere or a smoke ring. God was a smoker. Wait, let me put the... Makes it so much more interesting. I actually just ordered one that's called a Mighty Blaster that's even bigger than this. But it looks like so. Stan Tenen calls this the bagel theory of reality. For obvious reasons. What's that? It actually is. There's a deep mystical tradition with bagel. And you're being joking, but there actually is a deep tradition of mysticism with bagels. You guys didn't buy that one. All right, never mind. I tried. I was trying to run off with that one, but now that's the universe. There's a great line. There's a great line in the movie Taking Woodstock about Woodstock being put on. And the girl says to Ellie, who's the main character, she hasn't slept probably in like a week. And he's talking about how, he's having problems with his parents, and everybody's getting electrocuted at Woodstock at that point because it rained and nothing's grounded properly and nobody will go on stage and there's this feedback and buzzing everywhere. And he's like, oh, perspective. My problem's nothing compared to yours. And she said, perspective. Perspective is what shuts out the universe. Everyone with their own little perspective. Now, it goes a lot deeper in my Realization of Christ CDs. I go deeper into the Garden of Eden. But what else could possibly look like that? Well, that sort of breath. What was that supposedly we were told Eve wasn't supposed to eat? Fruit tree bearing fruit whose seed is inside of itself, Genesis 1:11. It doesn't say apple. That's the flow pattern of the universe. That is the natural flow of a toroidal sphere. A toroidal sphere is the natural flow pattern of anything that is part of a larger process of manifestation, okay? Interesting, if you take an apple and cut it across, you see the star of seeds. Seeds are contained within itself. I recognize that one center within you is the center within me. Okay?
This verse in Genesis is why we had you start at 1:11.
Oh, good. Well, you didn't even know about it. That's actually pretty... I didn't either, actually. I think I wrote that at like probably 1 a.m. So you're not supposed to reveal those kinds of things. That's the gravitational field of the earth. It's an apple, isn't it? Now, there's something else, though. That's the gravitational field of the human heart. 3 feet out is the primary field. It goes out 12 to 15 feet. Heart Math Institute, which is where this photo comes from. That's actually not a perfect representation of the human heart. It's actually closer to that. It's not as perfectly cylindrical as we would like to believe. It actually goes out in all kinds of directions. But for intents and purposes, I'm going to keep on this one right now. And I'm going to read you this from the Biology of Transcendence from Joseph Chilton Pearce.
You're saying that the heart
is
the larger of the two?
Yeah, well, the heart is both. It's all heart. You can actually perceive the heart from 15 feet away with sensing equipment. But it's strongest within 3 feet. I'm going to keep going. I want to tie it all together before we have any kind of questions real quick, though. But what you're looking at here is that electromagnetic field. First of all, I told you about the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Does anybody know what the first human organ is that's created? It's the heart. Does anybody know what the second is? It's the tongue, and it comes out of the heart. And in many Aboriginal and mystic traditions, one of the greatest ways of leading to ecstasy, and there's no kids, there's actually an organ, much like a sexual organ, at the top of your mouth. And one of the things that they often do is to actually massage their tongue on the roof of their mouth, which activates the pineal gland, which is right behind what we call our third eye. Try it sometime. Very interesting. And it'll react within a couple of seconds. Immediately. It's a pretty quick. But we're not going to go into that right now. But this is the thing that in this book, The Biology of Transcendence, Joseph Chilton Pearce, an amazing book. Right before this quote that I'm giving you, he talked about in science labs how you can take a heart cell, one single cell from a heart, and you can take it away from the heart and it'll continue to beat for a certain point of time, and then it reaches what's called fibrillation, and it stops. You can take 2 heart cells, and you can have one that's not beating, or one that's beating at a different rhythm than another, and you get them close enough within proximity, they synchronize without touching. Even with a small barrier between both of them, they still will synchronize. That's what they do. The torus function of the humus heart, that's not confused with the hummus heart, which is the Middle Eastern heart. And it's really good with, chips and celery and stuff. The torus function of the human heart is apparently holographic. I just want to pause really quickly. You mentioned the holographic nature of reality just a few minutes ago. Charlotte did. If you take an actual true laser plate, a holographic laser plate, and you shine a laser into it, you'll see a three-dimensional holographic image in its entirety. If you take that plate and drop it on the ground and it splinters into thousands of pieces, you can pick up each individual splinter, shine the laser, and you will still see the full three-dimensional whole holographic image in its entirety on every single sliver. And you can break those up. And if you're able to get a laser in there, you'll still see the full image. Okay? The torus function of the human heart is apparently holographic, meaning that any point within the torus contains the information of the entire field. Any location within the heart's field, no matter how infinitesimal, all the frequencies of the heart's spectrum are present. Further, according to physicists, a torus is a very stable form of energy, which once generated and set in motion, tends to self-perpetuate. Some scientists conjecture that all energy systems from the atomic to the universal are toroidal in form. Just keeps rolling through itself. Do you see? Okay. See what it's doing? It's just rolling through itself. There we go. That's a good one. This leads to the possibility that I have a smoking gun, leads to the possibility that there is only one universal torus encompassing an infinite number of interacting holographic tori within its spectrum. It's one singular torus with many smaller embedded. Because electromagnetic torus fields like this are holographic, it is probable that the sum total of our universe might be present within the frequency spectrum of any single torus. Think the human heart. As it turns out, then, that William Blake was able to see a world in a grain of sand demonstrated insight as well as creative vision. An individual heart, torus, may participate holographically within a universal heart or torus over a wide range, from the simple wave particle to the incredible complexities of our heart, brain, and body, all of which are electromagnetic in nature. One implication of this is that each of us centered within our heart torus is as much the center of the universe as any other creature or point, with equal access to all that exists. That was the one that I showed you there. Does that feel like, oh, the last few months? I got a video on YouTube of me in Myrtle Beach a couple weeks ago, and I talked about that sacred rag that we feel like we're being twisted, okay? I've got the last couple minutes here. I'm going to start pulling this all together. But we feel like there's a twisting. We asked for higher consciousness, and we asked for higher energy, and then we get it, and because our system isn't able to handle it because of all of our crap, then we scream about it, and we resist it, we stop the process, and then we start to suffer. And then we complain about the suffering because it's their fault. Changing cast of characters. In the words of Michael Rice, if something has happened to you 87 different times with 42 different people, who's the only person that was there every single time? It was you. It's always you. Okay? But what we have here is we've got a several thousand-year-old process here. We've had basically a very strong masculine breath that's been going on for a while. Feminine breath would be, masculine would be, it's not two different energies. It's two qualities within one singular process. When I'm talking of masculine and feminine, we've been so masculinized and beat over the head with stuff, physicality for 2,000 years. It's almost like we need to focus completely 100% on feminine just to bring the balance back. And what more beautiful self-balancing system could there be than one that, with all of this imbalance that we've had, that is able to bring more masculinity through the female human and more femininity through the masculine human to bring it back into balance. If someone can't see that, you're completely asleep. Completely asleep. It's a self-balancing system. That's the way the system works. And what happens at the end of a 2,000-year-old out-breath is breathe out. Breathe out as long as you can. What happens at the end of that out-breath? We're into that turn of the ages. And this is astronomy, and the implicate is the explicate, the internal is the external. People say, oh, I don't believe in astrology, I read the Bible. And it's like, have you ever read the Bible then? Because it's all over the place. It's like every third line from Jesus is astrology. But the end of that masculine out-breath has exactly what it did for the last, years and months especially. Has anybody feel a shift in the last 2 or 3 days? I'm sitting there at West End Bakery, my hangout spot in Asheville. I guess it was Thursday, and I almost started bawling. It was like, oh my God, what's going on? My head was popping, and I'm posting stuff on Facebook, and everybody's going, oh, what a dope. Some people, the people I know, but they sent those privately because they didn't want to be attacked. But here's the thing. It's all one singular process. It's not here, there. It's not inside, outside. It's not good and bad. It's not light and dark. It's all part of one singular whole. It's all one singular process. And I want to leave you with this. And I know it seems like it's really wide, but let this kind of work on you. If you're on the email list, I'll send out the link. Watch this over and over again. Different things are going to start coming in. Eve took her bite of her own perspective, her own little piece of the apple. Before that, they're naked in the garden, and God's around, and they're not ashamed because it's not them plus God. And she took her own little bite of that flow pattern, her own little piece of the perspective. And then, of course, Adam had to do what? He had to take his own bite. The feminine had to take the first bite because the feminine was the natural flow. The masculinity was already in the physical. The masculinity was basically, in some ways, already partially asleep. And who did it say fell asleep? Adam. It didn't say Eve did. Did it say that he woke up? Now. It's happening now. And I want to leave you with this piece, okay? This is actually at the end of my DVD, but this morning I just knew that it had to come out. My other passion language besides, actually this really quick. What is that feeling in terms of a fractal? What happens when that sort of starts to happen as we all start funneling down? And what is it that's been happening over the last few years? We've been funneling closer together. Together. We scream for light and togetherness, and then we get it and we scream about the suffering of it because we don't want to see everybody else's stuff in our face. But it's all one singular system, and you're not seeing their stuff, you're seeing stuff. And the system is like a car engine. It runs beautifully, normally, until you throw grit and dirt into it, and then the system is going to start to break down. And that's when you need to be more open and flowing. And that's where that flow that I'm speaking of happens. And I just want to leave you with this quote. My other passion language is Lakota. And this is from Tashunka Witko, who's known as Crazy Horse, technically his Crazy Horse. He said this to Tatanka Yohata, Sitting Bull, 3 days before he was assassinated in 1877. Upon suffering, beyond suffering, the red nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing to a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations. 19, 20 years, 1877, 7 generations is now. I see a time of 7 generations when all of the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. Think of the torus. And in that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding and wisdom of this unity. And the young white ones will come to those of our people and give freely of this knowledge. I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells. Because when you are at that center within you and I am at that place within me, we shall be one. Which brings me right back to the first thing I said. It's all in that first letter of everything contained within one singular whole. It's not a God that's out there. It's one process, and we're all part of the process. In the words of the Tao is like a river flowing home to the sea, but there is nothing more stronger yet more yielding than water. And we're a drop in the ocean. Can a drop in the ocean do much by and of itself? Probably not. How can water become powerful? Coming together. That flow can change anything. Transmute, transform, translate. And that's exactly what's happening. We're getting what we asked for. So now it's up to us where we go from here. It's all one process, and it's all in your heart. Love one another as I have loved you. Thank you. Thank you. And the official, for whom the bell tolls. Thank you. I know it's kind of wide, but okay, that's enough of that. What's that?
Why did Questions, anybody?
You know, a lot of the places I go to, I constantly have to give like an intro. And and I'll tell you one thing, if there's any challenge of what I do other than being away from family a lot, because I travel constantly across North America, and next year it's all over the world, it's intro. It becomes a challenge after a while. The great thing about something like this is I can jump into the middle. And if you're completely baffled and don't understand what I said, good. That means you're open. So, thank you. Any questions? Quick ones?
It's not a question. That your interpretation of the first symbol you put up there, that you're going back to, where is that on paper? And the translation.
Which symbol?
The one at the very beginning.
Abun? That one? That's the first word of the Lord's Prayer.
I know, but go over it one more time from the right to the left.
Oh, you mean this? Oh, okay.
Everything's
One single whole, duality.
Duality.
That word means replicate or multiply, and then that means basically physicality or connect, completion. All physicality is a replication within duality of one single process. And the key is all right there in the first letter. It's all one single whole. There's nothing outside of itself. There's nothing outside of God.
But it's a process diagram.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah. I mean, and this is, if you could understand that, you could stop reading prosperity books.
Yeah. What was the last one again?
Basically physical nun, which means completion, something coming to completion, basically. Oh, sure, absolutely. And that it's constantly going in all directions, this way, that way. It's just constantly, think of all those fractals, it's all moving. And I think if there's any key to remember, it's that you may see just one little dot focus on one dot, but there's just one light here. Human light is nuhra, which is lunar light, feminine light, the light of the moon. What's unique about the light of the moon versus the light of the sun? Well, it's reflective. That's a good thing I hadn't thought of. But it's reflective. It's still the light of the sun. And we say, I want the light of the sun. You are the light of the sun, you dope. Dolt, not dope. I used dope before. Dolt is more of an English word, so you dolt.
Very good.
Thank you. Well, you're not going to have to heat this place for another day or two.